There is a fundamental misconception about the heart that we all kind of accept by default.
Mm.
We grow up thinking of it as just a muscle, a brute force engine. It squeezes, blood moves, end of story. It's the cartoon heart model.
It is the cartoon model. And while it's not entirely wrong, it misses the actual point of the biology.
It misses the genius of it.
It does. Because if you actually open up the source material, and today we are talking about the absolute heavyweights of medical literature, you realize that view is mechanically insufficient.
It misses the elegance.
It misses the elegance, and it misses the physics. If the heart were just a brute force squeezing muscle, it would fail within minutes. The heart is actually a masterpiece of sequence.
Ah, okay.
It's about timing, torque, and pressure gradients. It's about efficiency, not just raw power.
That is exactly where we are going today. We are doing a deep dive into the mechanics of the pump itself. And to do this, we aren't using a quick summary sheet. We are synthesizing two of the Bibles of physiology.
We are. We've got Ganon's Review of Medical Physiology, which is our go-to for the incredible nitty-gritty cellular and mechanical details. It explains the how at the fiber level.
And we are pairing that with Guyton and Hall textbook of medical physiology.
Which is, it's the gold standard for understanding the systems level view, how the heart interacts with the rest of the body, the concepts of flow and regulation.
So Ganon takes us inside the engine room, and Guyton shows us how that engine fits into the whole ship.
That's a great way to put it.
Our mission today is to decode the cardiac cycle. We want to understand the physics that keeps us alive. We're going to look at pressure, volume, timing, and how they all dance together. But before we dive in, our standard disclaimer applies here.
It does. We're building a conceptual map.
Exactly. This is a guide. We are synthesizing these chapters to help you navigate the territory, but this doesn't replace reading the map yourself.
Absolutely not. If you are a med student, a clinician, or honestly just a physiology nerd, you need to go back to the text.
We're here to provide the aha moments that make the text stick.
That's the goal.
So let's start with the architecture. Because looking at the diagrams in Ganong, the first thing that strikes you is that we talk about the heart in the singular. But functionally, that's just mechanically inaccurate.
It is. Physiologically, you really have to think of it as two separate hearts. You have a right heart and a left heart, fused together, but beating in unison.
Two pumps, two circuits.
Exactly. The right heart is your pulmonary pump. Its job is, it's relatively low pressure. It just needs to nudge the blood next door to the lungs.
Just over the fence.
Just over the fence. To grab oxygen and dump carbon dioxide, it doesn't need to be a bodybuilder. The pressures are, maybe a quarter of what you see on the other side.
Whereas the left heart?
The left heart is the heavy lifter. It's the systemic pump. It has to generate enough pressure to drive fluid from your chest all the way down to your toes, up to your brain, and back again, often against gravity. That requires a massive pressure gradient.
And you can see that just by looking at the muscle thickness, right? The left ventricular wall is so much thicker.
Oh, dramatically thicker. It's a power pump designed for high-pressure work.
Now, Guyton makes a distinction here that I think is often overlooked in basic biology. We usually group the atria and ventricles together as just chambers, but he specifically calls the atria primer pumps.
That's such a crucial mechanical distinction. Think of a high-performance engine. You have the main cylinders. Those are the ventricles. They provide the raw power.
Right.
But to get maximum efficiency, you need fuel injectors to top off the cylinders right before they fire. That's what the atria do. They're the injectors.
And the numbers Guyton provides are surprisingly low. He says the atria only improve ventricular filling by about 20%.
Only 20%, which implies that a full 80% of the filling just happens passively.
How does that work?
Well, the blood just flows. It comes from the body through the open atrium and directly into the relaxed ventricle before the atrium even thinks about contracting.
So the ventricle is already mostly full before the atria even do their job.
Exactly. And this is why people can link with atrial fibrillation.
Right. If your primer pump breaks, if your atria are just quivering instead of giving that coordinated beat,
you lose that 20% kick, the atrial kick we call it. You're not going to be winning any marathons because you've lost your top-end efficiency, your performance boost.
But for sitting here having a conversation,
you'd be fine. Maybe a little short of breath on the stairs, but you'd be fine. The ventricles are the non-negotiable part. They are the power source. If they fail, the game is over.
So let's zoom in a level deeper. We've got the gross anatomy 2 pumps, primer versus power. But Ganong spends a lot of time on the microstructure. What makes cardiac muscle myocardium so different from, say, the skeletal muscle in my arm?
Yeah, this is fundamental. It comes down to connection and recruitment. If you lift a coffee cup, your
Mm.
brain signals just enough muscle fibers in your bicep to do the job. You don't fire the whole muscle.
It's granular control.
Precisely. You recruit what you need. The heart absolutely cannot do that. It would be a disaster
Why?
because the heart functions as a syncytium.
Okay, unpack that term for us. Syncytium.
It basically means tissues together. In your bicep, the muscle cells are pretty much insulated from each other. They need a nerve to tell them to fire. In the heart, the cells are physically and electrically fused together by these structures called intercalated discs,
And inside those discs are the famous gap junctions.
which are essentially open doorways between cells, tunnels. Physiologically, they offer almost zero resistance to electricity.
So an impulse in one cell.
Becomes an impulse in all of them, instantly. So if one cardiac cell depolarizes, if one cell fires, the signal spreads like wildfire to all its neighbors. It is an all-or-nothing event for that chamber.
You can't have half a heartbeat.
You cannot. You get a coordinated, unified contraction. Imagine if the left side of your ventricle contracted while the right side was relaxing. You just slosh blood back and forth inside the chamber.
You'd have zero output.
Zero output. The syncytium ensures the chamber acts as a single unified piston, squeezing in a coordinated way.
Now, speaking of that piston action, this was the detail in Guyton that really it blew my mind. I always visualize the heart squeezing inward, like clenching a fist, but that's not really what happens.
Not at all. That would be, again, incredibly inefficient from a physics standpoint. Guyton describes the fiber orientation, and it's all about the twist.
The fiber spiral.
They do. It's beautiful. The subpartial fibers, the outer layer of muscle spiral in one direction, let's say to the left, but the subendocardial fibers, the inner layer spiral in the opposite direction to the right.
They're opposing helices.
Exactly. Two interwoven spirals. So when they contract, what do you think happens?
They're pulling against each other.
You're wringing the heart out. The best metaphor, and the one he uses, is a wet towel. To get the water out, do you just squeeze it? No. You grab both ends and you twist in opposite directions.
And that's what the heart does.
That is exactly what the heart does. This twisting motion pulls the base of the heart down toward the apex, narrowing the chamber and ejecting the blood with incredible efficiency.
It's not a squeeze, it's a torsion, a wringing motion.
It is. But here is the blinkest insight, the part most people miss. What happens when you let go of a twisted towel?
It snaps back, it untwists on its own.
It recoils. It has stored potential energy in that twist. And that recoil is an active process. In the heart, that untwisting happens during relaxation or diastole. And it creates a physical suction force.
Wait. So the heart isn't just pushing blood out during contraction?
No.
It's actively sucking blood in during relaxation?
Precisely. The untwisting, this recoil, drops the pressure inside the ventricle so fast that it actively pulls blood in from the atrium. This is vital for the rapid filling phase. It's not just a passive bag waiting to be filled. The machine is designed to load itself.
That changes the whole perspective on relaxation. It's not just a passive off state, it's an active mechanical event.
It is an active, energy-requiring event, and that leads us perfectly into the cycle itself.
Okay, let's map this out. The cardiac cycle. Genong and Guyton both break this down into two main acts, diastole and systole.
Relaxation and contraction. A play in two acts.
But to really understand the physics, we need to slow this down. A whole heartbeat takes less than a second, but there are these distinct phases where the pressure and flow dynamics shift dramatically.
And the rule of law here is simple, and you have to burn this into your brain. Blood flows from high pressure to low pressure, but only if the valve between them is open.
The valves are the gatekeepers.
They are the gatekeepers, and pressure is the key.
So let's start Act 1, diastole, the filling phase. The heart has just finished beating. The aortic valve slams shut. What is the state of the ventricle at that exact moment?
At that instant, we are in the phase of isovolumetric relaxation.
Okay, let's break that word down. Isovolumetric.
Iso means same. Volumetric means volume, same volume.
So the exit door, the aortic valve, is closed. And the entrance door, the mitral valve, is also closed.
The ventricle is a completely sealed chamber. The muscle is relaxing, it's untwisting like we discussed. The pressure is plummeting. It drops from, say, 100 millimeters of mercury down to near zero in a fraction of a second.
But, and this is the key, the volume of blood inside hasn't changed, not by a single drop.
Because both doors are shut. It's depressurizing, but it's not filling yet.
So when does it start to fill?
It can't fill until the pressure inside the ventricle drops below the pressure in the atrium sitting right above it.
The pressure gradient has to reverse.
As a reverse.
Yeah.
And the moment it does, even by 1 millimeter of mercury.
The mitral valve opens.
And because of that suction force from the untwisting, plus the built-up pressure in the atrium, you get the rapid filling phase. Ganning notes that something like 70% of the total blood volume for that beat rushes into the ventricle right here, in the first third of diastole.
Just a huge inrush of blood.
A massive inrush.
Then it slows down.
Then it trickles. We call that diastasis. The pressure gradients have mostly equalized, so the flow slows to a crawl. The ventricle is now mostly full.
And this is where a primer pump comes in, the atrial kick.
Right at the end, the electrical signal finally hits the atria, they contract, and they squeeze that last little bit, that final 20% of blood, into the ventricle, just topping it off.
So now the tank is full. We are at end diastolic volume. The stage is set for Act 2, systole, the ejection.
And again, we start with an isovolumetric phase. This is arguably the most critical phase for understanding cardiac efficiency and the energetics of the heart.
Isovolumetric contraction. The electrical signal hits the ventricle and the muscle starts to squeeze.
Immediately, the pressure inside the ventricle starts to rise. This rising pressure slams the mitral valve shut. That thump is your lub. The first heart sound, S1.
Okay, so the intake valve, the mitral valve, is closed. But the exit valve, the aortic valve, is still closed.
It's still closed because the pressure in the aorta, the main artery, is high. Let's say it's 80 mmHg. That's your diastolic blood pressure. The pressure in the ventricle is just starting its climb. It's maybe 5 to 10 mmHg.
So the ventricle is a filled room again, but now the walls are contracting, squeezing inward.
It is generating massive tension. The pressure rockets up 10, 30, 50, 70 mmHg, but absolutely no blood is moving out of the heart yet.
Why is this efficient? It sounds like the engine is just revving in neutral.
It's building potential energy. Think of a weightlifter getting set before the clean and jerk. You have to grip the bar and generate enough tension in your muscles to overcome the weight before the weight even moves an inch off the floor.
I see.
The heart has to do the same thing. It has to build enough pressure to overcome the pressure in the aorta to crack open that aortic valve against the resistance of the entire body.
And once it crosses that threshold, once ventricular pressure exceeds aortic pressure,
the valve opens, and we enter the ejection phase. The blood rushes out into the aorta, into the body.
And Guyton breaks this ejection into two parts as well, right?
Yes, rapid ejection and slow ejection, similar to filling. In rapid ejection, which is the first third of the time, about 70% of the blood leaves the heart.
And the other 30%.
That's slow ejection. The ventricle is starting to relax, but the momentum of the blood keeps it flowing out for a little while longer, even as the pressure starts to drop.
I want to pause on the timing aspect here. This is so important. Genong highlights something that feels almost like a design vulnerability, or at least a critical trade-off, regarding how time is split between these phases.
A timing trade-off, yes. This is fascinating and clinically very relevant.
At rest, systole, the pumping work, takes about 0.27 seconds. Diastole, the rest and fill period, takes 0.53 seconds. So you spend roughly twice as much time resting and filling as you do working.
Which is great. The heart muscle, the myocardium, gets its own blood supply from the coronary arteries during diastole. It needs that rest time to refuel.
But what happens when you exercise? Or if you have a pathological tachycardia, a dangerously racing heart?
You speed up the whole cycle. A heartbeat might take only 0.4 seconds instead of 0.8.
But you don't speed up the phases equally. That's the key.
That is the absolute key. Systole, the contraction phase, has a sort of minimum time required. It shrinks a little bit, but not much.
Yeah.
But diastole gets slashed. Your filling time gets dramatically shorter.
So your filling time disappears.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
If your heart rate goes over, say, 180 beats per minute, the window of diastole becomes so short that you physically do not have enough time to fill the ventricle before it's told to beat again.
You're running the pump dry.
You're pumping an empty chamber. This is why extreme tachycardia causes cardiac output to crash and people to pass out. It's not that the muscle is weak. It's that the timing has failed. You've violated the fundamental law of the cycle. You have to fill before you can pump.
That really drives home the sequence over force argument. You can have the strongest muscle in the world, but if you didn't take the time to fill it, you're doing zero effective work.
Precisely. It's a timing problem, not a force problem.
Okay, let's talk about the hardware regulating this flow. The valves. Guyton seems surprisingly adamant about what the valves don't do.
He is. He wants to dispel this myth that valves are active structures. They aren't smart. They don't have little motors or muscles that open them. They are purely passive flaps of tissue.
Like saloon doors.
Exactly like saloon doors.
Yeah.
They obey simple physics. If pressure is higher behind them, they get pushed open. If pressure is higher in front of them, they get slammed shut. That's it.
But there are muscles attached to them, the papillary muscles. I think a lot of people, myself included, have assumed at some point that those muscles pull the valves open.
The most misunderstood muscles in the body. If the papillary muscles pulled the atrioventricular valves open during systole, you would kill the patient instantly.
Why? What would happen?
Because systole is when the ventricle is squeezing. The pressure is sky high. If you pull the intake valve open at that moment, all the high-pressure blood would shoot backward into the atrium and lungs. Catastrophic regurgitation.
So what are they doing then? They contract at the same time as the ventricle.
They are the guy ropes on a tent, or the cords on a parachute.
An anchor.
An anchor. When the ventricle contracts, the pressure is massive. It wants to blow the valve leaflets backward, prolapse them up into the atrium. The papillary muscles contract at that exact same moment to pull the tethers, the chordae tendineae, tight.
They are tensioners. They prevent the door from blowing open the wrong way.
They hold the door shut against the hurricane inside the ventricle. They don't open the door, they keep it from breaking.
And the sounds we hear with a stethoscope, the lub, the dub, that is just the mechanical violence of these doors slamming shut.
It is. It's the vibration of the blood, the heart walls, and the valves themselves as the blood flow is abruptly stopped. S1, the lub, is the closure of the AV valves, the mitral and tricuspid. S2, the dub, is the closure of the semilunar valves, the aortic and pulmonary.
S2 is usually sharper, right?
It is. It's a higher frequency snap because those valves are closing under much higher pressure.
And Ganong mentions that if you listen closely, especially in a young, healthy person, S2 is often split.
Physiological splitting, yes. It's a beautiful demonstration of these mechanics. When you take a deep breath in, you increase venous return to the right side of the heart.
More preload for the right ventricle.
Exactly. So the right ventricle takes a little bit longer to pump out that extra blood. This causes the pulmonary valve to stay open a fraction of a second longer than the aortic valve.
So you hear the aortic valve close, then the pulmonary valve, APAW.
You hear ta-da instead of just da. And it's a sign of a healthy, compliant right ventricle. It's normal.
But if you hear other noises, like a whoosh or a swish,
that's turbulence. Healthy, laminar flow, smooth flow is silent. If you hear noise, the flow is disturbed. That's a murmur.
So what causes that?
Two main things. Think about putting your thumb over the end of a garden hose. You narrow the opening. The water speeds up and gets chaotic. That's stenosis. A stiff, narrow valve that doesn't open properly. The blood has to whistle through a small opening. Or the valve is leaky when it should be closed. Blood flows backward through it. That's regurgitation or insufficiency. Both create turbulence. Both create sound.
It really is just plumbing diagnostics, isn't it?
100%. You are listening to the fluid dynamics of the pipes.
I want to pivot now to visualization. We've described the timeline of the cycle, the acts and the play, but engineers and cardiologists use a graph to look at this all at once, the pressure-volume loop.
The PV loop, yes. If you can understand this graph, you understand the mechanics of a single heartbeat. It's one of the most powerful teaching tools in physiology.
It looks a bit like a misshapen box or a loop plotted on a graph where the vertical y-axis is pressure and the horizontal x-axis is volume inside the ventricle.
That's right. So imagine you're a little car driving around the perimeter of this box, starting one cycle.
Okay, let's walk it. Where do we start?
Let's start at the bottom left corner. This is the end of the last beat. The mitral valve is just about to open. The ventricle is empty-ish. It has its end systolic volume, and the pressure is very low.
So we're at low pressure, low volume. Now the mitral valve opens, and we start filling.
Right, so our car moves to the right along the bottom edge of the loop. Volume is increasing as blood flows in, but because the ventricle is relaxed and compliant, the pressure stays pretty low.
We're pouring blood into a relaxed bag.
Exactly. We move right until the tank is full. We're at the bottom right corner of the loop now. This is the end diastolic volume.
Now we turn the corner and go straight up. A perfectly vertical line.
What's happening here? Pressure rockets up from near zero to, say, 80 millimil of Hg. But the volume...
The volume does not change. We're not moving left or right on the graph.
Isovolumetric contraction. We're building the energy to open the door to the aorta.
Once we hit the top right corner, we've built enough pressure, the aortic valve pops open.
And our car turns left, arcing across the top of the loop. This is the ejection phase.
Volume is decreasing now because we're pushing blood out, so we move to the left, and pressure rises to a peak. That's your systolic blood pressure, and then starts to fall as the ventricle empties.
We move left until the aortic valve shuts. That's the top left corner of the loop.
And to complete the cycle, we drop straight down, another vertical line.
Pressure crashes down from, say, 100 millimillis G back to near zero, but volume, again, stays the same.
Isovolumetric relaxation. Back to the start.
And you've completed one beat.
So why does this shape matter? Why do physiologists obsess over this box?
Because the area inside that box, the physical space enclosed by the loop, represents the stroke work. It's a direct measure of the mechanical energy the heart expended for that one beat. A bigger box means a harder working heart.
And the width of the box, from the far right edge to the far left edge.
That's your stroke volume. The end diastolic volume minus the end systolic volume, it's literally how much blood you ejected.
And this leads to maybe the most critical metric in clinical cardiology, ejection fraction.
The EF.
Yes.
What is that exactly? It's simply the percentage of the full tank you pumped out. It's the stroke volume divided by the end diastolic volume.
So if a healthy heart fills to, say, 120 milliliters and pumps out 70.
Your stroke volume is 70. Your EF is 70 divided by 120, which is around 60%. Normal is between 55 and 70%.
So even a healthy heart leaves a good amount of blood behind.
Always. You never empty the tank completely. That leftover blood is a reserve.
But if your EF drops to, say, 30%, that's a big problem.
That is the definition of systolic heart failure. You're filling the tank just fine, but the pump is too weak to squeeze the blood out. The loop becomes short and wide.
So we have a machine, we have the loop that describes its function, but this machine has to adapt. If I stand up and start running for a bus, my muscles need 5 times as much blood. How do we tune this engine on the fly?
This brings us to the regulation of cardiac output, and it all starts with the golden equation. Cardiac output, heart rate x stroke volume.
Okay, that's simple enough. The amount of blood pumped per minute is how often you pump, times how much you pump per beat.
Exactly. And you can regulate it by changing either of those variables.
Heart rate seems easy. The nervous system just hits the gas pedal or the brake.
It is pretty straightforward. The sympathetic nervous system, your fight or flight system, releases norepinephrine and the heart beats faster. Tachycardia, the parasympathetic system, via the vagus nerve, releases acetylcholine and the heart slows down. Bradycardia. Done.
But regulating stroke volume, how much you pump per beat, that seems more complex. Ganong and Guyton break this down into the big 3 variables.
Preload, contractility, and afterload. These are the 3 knobs you can turn to adjust the size and shape of that PV loop.
Let's take them one by one. Preload. This brings us to Starling's law of the heart.
The Frank-Starling law is one of the most elegant and important principles in all of physiology.
And it's surprisingly simple.
It is. It just says the energy of contraction is proportional to the initial length of the muscle fiber.
Translate that for the non-physiologist.
Think of a rubber band. The further you stretch it back, the harder it snaps forward. That is preload in the heart. If you dump more blood into the ventricle during diastole increased venous return, you stretch the walls of the heart.
So you increase the initial length of the muscle fibers.
Exactly. And the heart responds automatically by snapping back with more force on the next beat, pumping out that extra blood.
It's an intrinsic mechanism. It doesn't need the brain or nerves to tell it what to do.
No nerves required. It's built into the physics of the muscle fiber itself. At the molecular level, stretching the sarcomeres optimizes the overlap of actin and myosin filaments, allowing for more forceful cross-bridge formation.
And why is this so important?
It's vital for balancing the left and right hearts. Over time, the right and left ventricles have to pump the exact same amount of blood. If the right heart pumped just 1% more blood per minute than the left, within a few hours, all your blood would be trapped in your lungs.
Pulmonary edema.
Catastrophic pulmonary edema. Starling's law ensures that whatever volume the right heart sends to the lungs, the left heart receives that volume and pumps it out. Input automatically equals output, beat by beat.
Ganong calls this heterometric regulation.
Meaning different length.
Yeah.
You change the force by changing the resting length of the muscle.
Okay, that's preload. Second knob, contractility.
This is different. This is getting more force without stretching the fiber more. This is homometric regulation, same length.
How is that possible? How do you get a bigger bang without a bigger stretch?
Chemistry. This is the inotropic state of the heart. This is where the sympathetic nervous system comes back in. It doesn't just speed up the heart, it makes it squeeze harder.
Oh.
It floods the heart muscle cells with norepinephrine. This triggers a cascade inside the cell that leads to an increase in available intracellular calcium ions.
And calcium is the key.
Calcium is the direct trigger for muscle contraction. It's what allows those actin and myosin filaments to grab onto each other. More calcium means a stronger, more forceful grab. So even if the filling volume, the preload, is the same, the muscle itself squeezes with more intrinsic force.
So preload is a mechanical adjustment based on filling. Contractility is a chemical supercharging of the muscle itself.
That's a perfect analogy. On the PV loop, increasing contractility makes the loop taller and shifts it to the left. You generate more pressure, and you empty the ventricle more completely.
And the third knob, afterload.
Afterload is the resistance. It's the load the muscle must lift after it starts contracting. In practical terms for the left ventricle, it's effectively the pressure in the aorta. It's your blood pressure.
So if my blood pressure is chronically high from hypertension.
Your afterload is high. The heart has to generate a massive pressure during isovolumetric contraction just to crack the aortic valve open. That eats up a lot of energy and time.
It's like trying to open a heavy door that someone is leaning against from the other side.
Exactly. You spend a lot of your energy just getting the door open, which means you have less energy left to actually move blood through it. If afterload gets too high, the heart can't push as much blood out. Stroke volume drops.
So on the PV loop, high afterload would make the loop taller but narrower?
Precisely. The heart works harder. The area might even increase, but accomplishes less in terms of flow. It's inefficient.
Now, speaking of flow and resistance, this is where we have to shift gears. We've been talking about the heart as if it's the master of the circulatory universe, but Guyton completely flips the script in the second half of these readings.
The great Guytonian shift, yes. This is where he argues, very persuasively, that the heart is not actually the primary controller of cardiac output in a healthy person.
Which sounds like heresy. The heart is the pump. How can it not be the controller?
It does sound like heresy.
All right.
But his argument is this. The heart is permissive. It has a huge capacity to pump, but it cannot pump what it does not first receive.
So the bottleneck isn't the pump.
The bottleneck is the supply line. The rate-limiting step is venous return. Guyton proves through a series of elegant experiments that under normal resting conditions, it's the peripheral tissues that control the flow.
How do they do that?
Local metabolic control. If your muscles need more oxygen during exercise, their arterioles dilate. Total peripheral resistance drops. This allows more blood to flow through the tissues, and consequently, more blood rushes back to the heart through the veins.
And the heart, obeying Starling's law, simply pumps out whatever extra blood it receives.
Exactly. The tissues place the order. The heart just cooks what's delivered to the kitchen. The heart is, in this view, the servant of the periphery, not its master. At rest, the heart has a capacity to pump maybe 13 liters per minute, but the body is only sending it 5 liters per minute, so it pumps 5.
To explain this return flow, Guyton introduces a concept that is notoriously difficult for students. Systemic filling pressure, or...
It's a tough concept, but it's critically important. Let's try to simplify it. Imagine your heart stops. Right now. A sudden cardiac arrest.
Okay, a grim thought experiment.
The pump stops. For a few seconds, blood will continue to flow from the high-pressure arteries into the low-pressure veins until the pressure equalizes everywhere in the system. When everything settles and flow stops, the pressure in the entire circulatory system is the same. That single pressure value is the mean systemic filling pressure.
So it's the static pressure of the liquid inside the container of our blood vessels.
It's a measure of how full or tight the system is. It's determined by your blood volume and by how constricted your veins are. Normally, it's about 7 millimeters of mercury. This 7 millimilli Hg is the upstream driving pressure that pushes blood from the periphery back to the heart, where the pressure is near zero.
Okay, so if I'm hemorrhaging and I lose a liter of blood...
You lose volume. Your puzzle drops. Maybe it falls to 2 or 3 millimilli Hg. There's almost no pressure gradient pushing blood back to the heart. The heart could be perfectly healthy and strong, but the supply line is empty. That's hypovolemic shock.
Conversely, what if I have a condition like beriberi or a large AV fistula where my blood vessels dilate massively and peripheral resistance plummets?
Now the floodgates are open. Blood rushes back to the heart with very little resistance. Venous return skyrockets. The heart, being a good servant, tries to pump it all out. Cardiac output might go to 15-20 liters a minute.
That sounds like it would be stressful for the heart.
It is. This is called high-output heart failure. The heart itself might be healthy, but it eventually fails because it simply can't keep up with the overwhelming delivery of blood from the periphery.
It really highlights that you can't view the heart in isolation. It's part of a closed loop. You pull a string on one side of the loop and the knot tightens on the other.
And everything within that loop has a cost. Nothing is free.
This is a perfect segue. Ganong breaks down the economics of the heart near the end. It's oxygen consumption.
Yes, the heart is an oxygen hog. It's a purely aerobic organ. It extracts almost all the oxygen from the blood delivered to it via the coronary arteries. It has no oxygen reserve.
But not all work costs the same amount of oxygen.
Not at all. There's a huge difference between pressure work and volume work.
And one is much more expensive than the other.
Dramatically so. Pressure work is expensive. Volume work is relatively cheap.
Unpack that. Why is generating pressure so metabolically costly?
It comes down to a principle from physics called the law of Laplace. For a sphere or a cylinder, like the ventricle, wall tension is proportional to the pressure inside times the radius of the chamber.
Okay, physics time, wall tension, pressure, x radius.
To generate high pressure, the individual muscle fibers in the wall have to develop massive tension. And generating and holding tension is what burns ATP, is what burns oxygen. So if you have high blood pressure, high afterload, your heart is burning fuel at a prodigious rate just to hold that tension, even before it moves much blood.
But just moving a larger volume of blood.
If you just have to move a lot of fluid at low pressure, like in a condition called aortic regurgitation, where blood is just sloshing back and forth, it costs surprisingly little oxygen per beat. It's a volume load, not a pressure load. It is mechanically easier than generating high tension.
This explains a classic clinical finding. Patients with aortic stenosis, which is a pure pressure problem, get chest pain, angina much earlier and more frequently than patients with aortic regurgitation.
Exactly. The stenotic heart is doing the expensive pressure work.
Yeah.
It runs out of its oxygen budget very, very quickly. The volume-loaded heart can tolerate its condition for much longer.
And the radius part of that equation, wall tension, pressure x radius. That implies that a bigger, dilated heart has to work harder.
Much harder. This is a crucial point in heart failure. If the heart starts to fail and dilates, its radius increases. Now, to generate the same amount of pressure to pump blood, it has to generate more wall tension.
It becomes mechanically inefficient.
It enters a death spiral. The heart gets big, so it has to work harder, which causes it to remodel and get even bigger, so it has to work even harder. Its oxygen demand goes up while its efficiency collapses.
We've covered a massive amount of ground here, from the helical twist of the fibers to the precise timing of the valves, the physics of the PV loop, and the systemic regulation by the periphery.
It's a beautifully complex machine.
If we had to synthesize this for the listener, what are the absolute key takeaways they should walk away with?
I think first is that structure enables function. The twist of the muscle fibers isn't an accident. It's a design feature that allows for efficient ejection and active suction-based filling.
Okay, structure dictates function. What's number two?
Timing is as physical and as important as the muscle itself.
Yeah.
If you compromise the filling time, as in tachycardia, the pump fails. No matter how strong it is, sequence is king.
And the third?
The Guytonian view. The heart is permissive, not dictatorial. It serves the body's metabolic needs, which are communicated to it via venous return. It's a responsive engine.
And finally, a theme that ran through everything: efficiency. The heart is obsessed with efficiency.
It has to be. It beats 3 billion times in a lifetime. A 1% inefficiency would be a catastrophe over that timescale.
I want to leave the listener with this one final thought. We look at these diagrams and graphs, and it all feels very mechanical, like an engineered pump. But this is an engine that repairs itself while it's running. It is fueled by the very blood that it pumps through its own coronary arteries. And it's governed by these beautiful integrated laws of physics and biology.
And it never gets a day off.
So the next time you feel your own pulse, try to visualize that PV loop happening in real time inside your chest. Visualize that ringing, twisting motion.
And maybe take a moment to appreciate the silence between the beats, the silence of smooth laminar flow.
Thanks for diving in with us on this.
My pleasure. See you next time.